the most insane punishments used on women in history: ripping the breasts, crushing the fingers, cutting the tongue, and whatnot. Such historical passages tell the horrifying tales of human torture over the years. These punishments for women are very different from the ones we currently use. Although they were cruel, wicked, and frequently lethal, no one would dispute the torture. The atrocities continue to scream through history, showing how unfairly their lives were put to death. In your minds, the only options would be public humiliation or naked parade. To your astonishment, however, these punishments were seen as the mildest of all. There were several brutal systems of female torture in medieval times. Although death was the most prevalent type of female punishment throughout shared history, this does not rule out the possibility of even more gruesome torture and punishment. Today in this video, you will learn how privileged is today's woman. So without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Number 11. Status degradation. Status degradation has historically been employed as a formal punishment and continues to exist today. Under the time of the Roman Emperor Augustus, who ruled from 27 BCE to 14 CE, a woman found guilty of adultery would lose some of her citizenship privileges and be forced to pay fines. If they were found guilty of adultery or remarried, nobility in the Korean kingdom under the Joseon dynasty suffered a similar degradation of their social standing. When reduced to low-born ranks, adulteresses lost many of their rights and advantages, and the offspring of widows who remarried were forbidden from holding public office. Even more severe consequences existed for some high-status women who engaged in adultery during the Joseon dynasty, including death. Number 10. Shrew's fiddle. In the 16th and 17th century, the word shrew became common in England, and William Shakespeare even gave his play The Taming of a Shrew its name. A shrew was a noisy, domineering woman who would not confine herself to the responsibilities that society assigned to her, much like a scold. If a shrew ventured to disobey in medieval Germany or Austria, she might be met with the shrew's fiddle. The shrew's fiddle resembled a fiddle in shape, but that's where the similarity ended. The shrew's violin held its wearer's head fixed and confined and immobilized her arms, which were practically shackled in front of her face, with a huge opening for the neck and two smaller apertures at the wrist. The shrew's fiddle has been found in Germany, Denmark, Japan, Iran, and other places. It isn't only a female-only instrument either. You think this the most horrific punishment? Well, what's coming next would scare you for sure. Number 9. Hand clamps. This type of punishment, which gained notoriety during the Chinese feudal period, was designed specifically for women who disobeyed their master's orders. The perpetrators are required to place their fingers into special equipment that is intended to compress the victim's fingertips and cause severe pain. If the victim passes out, she is instantly brought back to consciousness by being showered with freezing water. The victim would endure the punishment until she lost all her power. The Cucking dynasty in the 19th century eventually put an end to this type of punishment. However, the method was quickly embraced by the European country. In order to crush the female's finger and force her to ultimately submit to male discrimination, the device was developed in every shape and size. Number 8. Virgin chamber. This form of torture was used against women in the Roman Empire. The victim would be executed inside a small windowless chamber. Iron nails would be fastened to the chamber's gate, and when closed, they would screw inside the offender's body. The interrogator can also jab poles inside the chamber through a small opening to abuse the subject even more. The victim then would be abandoned and allowed to starve and dehydrate to death. The woman who had been found guilty of violating her chastity vows received this kind of punishment. Number 7. Cucking and ducking stools. In English circles of punishment, the cucking and ducking stools first appeared in the 13th and 17th centuries, respectively. These stools were famously employed as torture devices for women who were accused of witchcraft, prostitution, and disorderly behavior in general, even though they weren't just for women. The cucking stool was a torture device used in public that looked a lot like a toilet. The wearer was carried through the town while being restrained and forced to sit on the cucking stool. The cucking stool was awkward and embarrassing, but it was nothing compared to the potentially fatal ducking stool. The individual who received the ducking stool punishment was made to sit in restraint, but this chair presented a greater risk because it was fastened to a wood beam that might be lowered into the water. The ducking stool occasionally led to drownings, which had a less than positive aspect in that the victim was shown innocent of witchcraft and free from the charge of the crime. Terrible, right? Wait for the next one, and you will see why it's a relief to be a woman in today's era. Number 6. Sitting wood horse. One of the harshest ways of female torture in medieval history was the sitting wooden horse. In this technique, ladies were tethered to an artificial horse that had a penis-like device mounted on the top, which was mounted in the middle of the horse and moved continuously, thanks to a shaft and iron nails. As a sort of punishment, the women were ordered to sit on it while completely naked. The penis-like object with attached nails would enter the victim's vagina, causing the victim to bleed profusely. Many would die immediately, and those who survived would experience paralysis for the rest of their lives. If this atrocity doesn't horrify you, let us inform you that this type of punishment was meted out for transgression as basic as adultery or even making her husband unhappy. Number 5. Face bridle. Face bridles were created for ladies who spread rumors or defamation. It was a gadget to quell noisy women and change their communication patterns. In order to manage his wife, the husband would go to the church or the government. After that, the judge would mandate that his wife wear a face bridle, which would cut her tongue if she attempted to move it. To further humiliate her, the husband would carry her around while she was wearing the bridle and would request that people spit on her face because of her big talk. Ireland and England saw the largest use of this gadget, but despite the severe humiliation and agony, the woman was not permitted to leave her husband's side. Number 4. Amputation. Amputation was one of the most painful and permanent methods of torture. Although not being as inventive as the other methods on the list, all indications point to an ancient Chinese penalty known as yu, which was used to punish more than 500 various transgressions, including theft and cheating. The body of an ancient Chinese woman dating to around 3,000 years ago has been discovered with amputated feet but otherwise in fair health. Although it was frequently employed as a punishment for other offenses abroad in medieval and ancient times, nose amputations, also known as rhinotomy, was a common penalty for adulterous women in ancient Egypt and the Byzantine Empire. The adulterous man, however, might get away with something less severe, like a fine or beating. Now we are entering into the top 3 most insane punishments. Ready to hear some of the most inhumane acts? Let's get going. Number 3. The breast ripper. As a unique kind of punishment, the breast ripper was designed specifically for unmarried mothers, sex offenders, and women who would perform abortions. Their breast would be severed from their bodies with this technology. The instrument's claws would be heated before they were used to pry the breast off the body. Despite how harsh it may sound, most criminals won't survive the penalty, while the unfortunate ones will be forced to lead a life of shame. Number 2. Pear of anguish. With a metal body and spoon-like portions that could be split apart using a screw, it served as a torture tool throughout the medieval era. The segments of this apparatus were inserted into a woman's mouth or vagina, which would progressively open to sever both her internal organs and genitalia. As a result of the severe bleeding, the victim was doomed to pass away. Women accused of adultery, witchcraft, or even homosexuality were subject to the penalty. Number 1. Judas cradle. Last but not least, the Judas cradle was the torture device created specifically for women who rejected religious authority during the Middle Ages in Europe. The culprit was placed on top of a wooden pyramid-shaped structure, and her wrists and legs were bound so that the weight could not be moved. The offenders would be tormented for the entire day while the pointy tip of the pyramid slowly inserted inside the vagina or anus. These ladies would be stripped naked and made to suffer in front of others, adding to their shame. It was a technique that caused a gradual yet agonizing death. Women were regarded as second-class citizens in practically every country during the medieval era. As a result, women who committed the same offenses as males received substantially worse penalties than their male counterparts. So guys, which one of the punishments was the most horrifying? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time.